Welcome to the Eat This Book podcast. I'm Michael Whitworth. Each day we take a small piece of scripture and we sit with it. Not a quick snack that disappears before lunch, not a chore you check off of a list, but rather a meal meant to be savored. So pull up a chair. Let's eat. In the early hours of June 6, 1944, Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt Jr. waded ashore at Utah Beach with the first wave of troops. He was 56 years old, walked with a cane, and had a heart condition his superiors didn't know about. He had requested the assignment. When his landing craft hit the wrong stretch of beach, a mile south of the planned zone, Roosevelt studied the terrain, made a decision, and told his officers, "We'll start the war from right here." He didn't lead from a bunker. He led from the sand, under fire, with a body that was failing him. A month later, he was dead of a heart attack. His authority was never in question, but it was confirmed, not contradicted, by the suffering. The writer of Hebrews has just laid out the blueprint for high priesthood, taken from among men, beset with weakness, called by God. Now he applies it to Christ, and the application is not what you'd expect. It runs through Gethsemane. The writer begins where the blueprint ended, with divine appointment. Christ did not exalt himself. God spoke twice, and the writer quotes both utterances. First, Psalm 2. "You are my son. Today I have begotten you." Then Psalm 110. "You are a priest forever, after the order of Melchizedek." The first quotation has appeared before, back in the chain of chapter 1, establishing the son's unique identity. But the second quotation is new, and it detonates quietly. A priest forever. Not after the order of Aaron, the priesthood the audience knew, the system built into the law, the lineage that had defied Israel's worship for over 1,000 years. After the order of Melchizedek, a priest from a different line entirely, an order that predates Aaron, predates Sinai, predates the law itself. The writer drops the name and moves on. He'll return to Melchizedek at length in chapter 7, but the seed is planted. Whatever this priesthood is, it isn't the one you were expecting. And the word forever matters. Aaron's priests died. They were replaced. The office continued. The office holders didn't. A priest forever doesn't rotate out. It doesn't retire. Doesn't pass the vestments to a successor. The appointment is permanent because the priest is permanent. The writer is signaling that the son's priesthood operates on a different calendar than anything Israel has known. And the entire passage plunges into the most visceral description of Jesus in the entire letter. In the days of his flesh, Jesus offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to him who was able to save him from death, and he was heard because of his reverence. The phrase, "in the days of his flesh," is startling after everything chapter 1 established. The radiance of God's glory, the exact imprint of the divine nature, the sustainer of the universe, and here, flesh. Days of it. Limited, embodied, mortal days in which the Son prayed the way desperate people pray. Not serene, hands folded, eyes closed, composure. Loud cries, tears. The language describes a person at the end of himself. Raw, guttural, holding nothing back. The scene behind the language is almost certainly Gethsemane, though the writer doesn't name it. "Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me." Luke tells us his sweat fell like drops of blood. Matthew says he was sorrowful to the point of death. The writer of Hebrews takes that moment and makes it the centerpiece of the son's priestly qualification. This is not a footnote in the son's story. It is the furnace in which his priesthood was forged. And he was heard. Not because his prayer was eloquent, not because he had earned a favor, because of his reverence, his godly fear, his holy submission. He was heard, but the cup was not removed. The answer to his prayer was not the elimination of the suffering. It was resurrection on the other side of it. Being heard by God does not always mean being spared. Sometimes it means being carried through. Although he was a son, he learned obedience through what he suffered. Every word in this sentence earns its place. Although, despite his identity, despite his divine nature, despite everything chapter 1 declared about him, a son, not a servant, not an angel, not a priest from the Aaronic line, the son. And even the son learned. The word doesn't imply previous ignorance or disobedience. It means he came to know obedience experientially, from the inside, in real time, through actual suffering. There is a difference between understanding obedience conceptually and practicing it when the cost is your life. The Son closed that gap, not by being exempt from the suffering, but by walking through every step of it. The connection to the blueprint from episode 114 is deliberate. The Aaronic priest dealt gently with the wayward because he himself was beset with weakness. The Son deals gently because he learned obedience through suffering. The mechanism is different. The Aaronic priest shared the people's sins. The Son shared their pain without sharing their failure, but the result is the same. A priest who understands, from the inside, what it costs to be human. And being made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation to all who obey him, being designated by God a priest after the order of Melchizedek. Made perfect, brought to completion. The same word from chapter 2, where the pioneer of salvation was perfected through suffering. The writer circles back to it here because the point hasn't changed. The Son's priesthood was not complete until he had passed through the full human experience of suffering and obedience. The resurrection didn't erase Gethsemane, it validated it. The suffering was the final qualification. And once perfected, the Son became something the Aaronic priest could never be, the source of eternal salvation. Not an annual atonement, not a temporary covering, eternal salvation, flowing from a priest whose appointment is forever, whose sacrifice is unrepeatable, and whose qualification was forged in the same furnace that burns you. The passage ends where it began, Melchizedek. The name bookends the section, framing everything between as the content of this mysterious priesthood. A priest who cried, a priest who bled, a priest who learned obedience the hard way and was made complete by it. That is the order of Melchizedek. Not a priesthood, a pristine ceremony, but a priesthood baptized in tears. Here's what we should savor from this passage. First, the Son prayed with loud cries and tears. Let that image dismantle any picture of Jesus as serene and untouchable. The priest who sits at the right hand of the Majesty on high once knelt in a garden and wept. The authority is real, but so was the agony. And the writer insists that the agony was not a detour from the priesthood, it was the making of it. Second, being heard does not always mean being spared. Jesus was heard because of his reverence, and the cup was not removed. If the Son's prayer was answered with resurrection through death, rather than rescue from death, then your unanswered prayers may not be unanswered at all. They may be answered on the other side of the thing you're begging to avoid. Third, the Son learned obedience, not because he was deficient, because obedience is not a concept to be understood, but a road to be walked. The learning was real, the suffering was real, and the completion that resulted was not theoretical. It was the forging of a priest who could stand before God on your behalf and say, I know what it costs. I walked the road. I learned it step by step. If you've prayed with loud cries and tears and felt like the ceiling was concrete, this passage says the Son prayed the same way, and he was heard. The silence you're experiencing is not evidence of absence. The Son's prayer was answered, but not in the way he asked. The answer was resurrection, not removal. Hold on. If you're learning obedience the hard way, through loss, through pain, through circumstances you didn't choose, the Son learned it the same way, although he was a son. And if the Son's obedience was forged in suffering, yours can be too. The furnace is not punishment, it's formation. If you've been told that strong faith means calm composure, that real trust never weeps, never shakes, never cries out. The writer of Hebrews disagrees. The most reverent prayer in history was offered with loud cries and tears. Desperation is not the opposite of faith. It can be the rawest expression of it. Bring the real prayer, the ugly one, the one you're afraid to say. The high priest has prayed that way before you. If you need a priest right now, someone who stands between you and God, who understands what you're carrying, who has the authority to help, this passage describes the one you have. Not a priest in pristine vestments who has never felt the ground shake beneath him. A priest who wept, who bled, who learned obedience through what he suffered, and who, because of all of that, became the source of your eternal salvation. And if the name Melchizedek means nothing to you yet, if it feels like a loose thread you can't place, hold it. The writer drops it twice in this passage, and we'll pick it up again at length. For now, know this much. The Son's priesthood doesn't belong to a system you expected. It's older, deeper, and permanent, and it was forged in the one place no one wanted it to go: the suffering. Next time on Eat This Book, what if the biggest problem isn't what you don't know, but that you've stopped growing? Hebrews pauses its argument and delivers a hard diagnosis. By now, you should be further along. Join me as we explore the difference between milk and solid food, and why spiritual maturity doesn't happen by accident. Thanks for eating with me. Until next time, may the Word dwell in you richly.